Assassin's Creed isn't one of gaming's most popular franchises for no reason. Despite some stumbles with repetition, samey-ness, and some bugged-out character faces that fueled more than their fair share of nightmares, the series has managed to reinvent itself just enough to stay relevant in the gaming zeitgeist. Despite its handful of missteps, we've seen fairly regular releases of this series for well over a decade, and that doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon. With a legacy approaching 15 games, and ever-changing expectations of gamers, Assassin's Creed's newest entry, Valhalla, certainly has its work cut out for it to continue to stand out as the unofficial standard-bearer for the open-world action genre. Ubisoft definitely seems aware of this though, as Valhalla does appear to be taking some notable steps to hang on to the popularity of the series. The thing you'll immediately notice upon seeing anything about this game is the new setting with an exciting new story. It seems that the explosion of interest among gamers in historical Scandinavian settings has reached a bit of a fever pitch that Ubisoft is hell-bent on capitalizing on with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and that makes a lot of sense. Some recent games like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice and 2018's God of War were certainly kicked up a notch with how well they used that period's likeness and aesthetics. God of War went in a predictably fantastical and mythological direction with it, while Hellblade turned inward and focused more on Senua's personal struggles and her mental illness. Somewhere in between these two approaches lies Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and it does appear to be coming together in an interesting way that will set the game apart from its predecessors at several junctions. Here, the main character, Eivor, can be either male or female, which is a nice touch. Eivor and her fellow 9th century clansmen and women find themselves on quite the exodus across the North Seas, as they look to greener pastures in the British Isles, which is mired in its own medieval Dark Age politics. This largely sets the tone for and drives the events of the story, as you and your troops travel across the land, toppling strongholds and establishing yourselves on this new continent. These events are driven by the context of this new story, and how those from this time survived in this feudal era. This and many other things make this setting interesting for the franchise. The far more brutal shades of humanity's history it involves are an interesting direction for Assassin's Creed. Valhalla is focused on a particularly brutal period in time of our history when the mass organizations of quasi-industrialized armies still had the brutal blunt force mindset of the Bronze Age past. This led to a level of personal violence on a scale that humanity had not really seen yet. This will make it feel somewhat at home with the previous two games, but still quite different at the same time. And that is pretty much exactly what the series needs to be doing right now, keeping things mostly in line with what has been working lately, but also giving it a starkly different coat of paint. Along with the differences in story and setting that Valhalla brings to the table, so does it with the way that the story unfolds. Narrative choice will be of great focus here. This is something that many games like Assassin's Creed, as well as AC themselves, have tinkered with a bit here and there, but usually leave the more consequential and extensive branching paths to BioWare and Quantic Dream games. Well, according to what is currently known about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it seems like the directions in which your choices can lead you is on another level than before, with entire characters and story arcs that can be found or missed, depending on what you choose at distinct crossroad moments in the story. This obviously has the benefit of added replay value, which is something many of the AC games already have much of. But if Valhalla can really embrace this the way it appears to be, this choice in story, setting, and ability to nudge the narrative in different directions could give the game's longevity a nice boost that fans of longer experiences would certainly appreciate on top of everything else. Valhalla isn't stopping at just giving us an interesting story though. The combat is also receiving a fresh look and some interesting twists, while the free-form flow of combat that has been a mainstay in the series looks to largely remain in place. Some nice seasoning is added with the flexibility of dual-wielding any two weapons you want. This introduces a wealth of directions you can take with your fighting style, at the expense of being able to hold a shield, although parrying is still available, so it's a trade that might be worth making depending on your situation and which one of the several types of enemies you're facing off against at any given time. You can even dual-wield shields if you want, which might seem ridiculous, but I can't help but be intrigued by that. However, like all Assassin's Creed games, combat in the broad daylight isn't always the answer in Valhalla. Sometimes sneaking around, veiled in non-threatening cloaks and hoods, and infiltrating certain areas to acquire the knowledge or items you need is ideal. As such, the series' trademark social stealth makes a return to the series, as you can now blend in with the crowds of the populace to make your way around the area. On top of all this is a fairly deep settlement building mechanic, which makes you responsible for more than just yourself. Hunting and foraging in the wilderness and pillaging enemy encampments are not only for yourself anymore. Building up your own settlement will help you upgrade your moveset, abilities, and gear in a way that feels much more like a deep RPG than what you would normally encounter in a typical action game. Here you can also keep track of your allies, enemies, and plot out your next invasion comprehensively. This will not only add a much-needed twist to the series, but will also keep certain fans of deeper games who might have rolled their eyes at this series before interested in this one long-term. Speaking of the invasions, Assassin's Creed Valhalla will have you raiding enemy bases and villages, striking fear in the hearts of the inhabitants by burning them to the ground and building up yourself and your settlement with the spoils you gain from plundering their stockpiles. Despite the multitude of interesting things this game is bringing to the series, this might just be the most engaging part. Planning your attack, preparing your equipment, then finally calling in your allies to fight alongside you as you assault these enemy bases is looking like nothing short of an outstanding innovation for the series if it delivers. That more or less encapsulates why AC Valhalla is going to be a rather big deal, if not the biggest game of the year. Surely it's up against some major gaming events like the new consoles and various launch titles for those, but if all of these new mechanics pan out like they appear they will, Assassin's Creed could do very well this year, despite its competition. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.